Was that still running in tandem, or is that something that came off the back of Stag Films?
It did come off the back of Stag Films because after doing my first film, people kind of knew, oh, this guy knows about archival footage. So I kind of was able to get my name out there. But generally speaking, I would say that they work in tandem. I don't really see a lot of differentiation between what I do with my own films and what I'm able to do with Hollywood films. It's the same skill. Is how do you take this unrelated, unconnected piece of footage and use it in a creative way to help realize a bigger vision. So that's what I do in my films, and that's what I do, for other people too. And I enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv. This time my guest is an independent filmmaker who I feel has an interesting approach to his work. Born and raised in Philadelphia, he graduated at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, whereupon he immediately optioned a script he had written about Elvis Presley returning from the grave to become the US president, apparently.
It could happen.
It could. It really could. And God, don't you wish it would, in some ways.
I wish it would.
Yeah. Yes. This beginning, I feel, showed how their career would be based on ideas that were outside of the box, so to speak, both in terms of story and of filmmaking style. In 2004, he formed Stag Films, writing and producing a few films before taking the director's chair himself for the film Sex Galaxy, which was groundbreaking in its use of recycled stock and public domain footage. This film received 3 awards in international film festivals, and he has made many more green films, as they are called, since then. And we are here to speak about one of these now, the satirical thriller, or at least that's what I call it, a satirical sort of comedy thriller, entitled Dead, White and Blue. My guest is the screenwriter, producer, director, and we will get to this later as well, archive researcher, I think it's called, Mr. Mike Davis. Hey, Mike, thanks for speaking today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I hope everything in that introduction was correct.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So my own description of the film, Dead, White and Blue. Now, an innocent black man, and I say that because it's important to the story. It's not meant to cause offence to anybody. Okay, we have to do all that now. He is killed towards the beginning of the film. Then a rogue FBI agent with a fantastic haircut, I might add, decides to use the help of the US military to defeat the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, who use shrink ray technology to absolve a racist cop who committed the murder. The FBI agent and the army developed the same technology to go in and stop the KKK. It's not your usual Hollywood fare, is it, Mike?
No, not at all. There's a little bit of Fantastic Voyage in there for any old sci-fi 50s fans, or 60s, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, this is not something you would probably see Hollywood make. But because I use pre-existing footage, mostly from that era of the 70s and 80s, I am able to include quite a lot of Hollywood-style elements like spaceships and armies and wars and kids and animals and crowd scenes and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I just try to make my storylines as crazy as the footage that I find to use.
Yeah, like I mentioned, it uses footage that is available in the public domain that you can use yourself. So some comedy shows have done things where they do little skits based on these sorts of, oh, we've got this footage, let's just put this voice over the top of that. But this takes it to another level where you've got a storyline that follows through for the whole 1 hour, 26 minutes, I think it is, of the film, or something around there. But the story works all the way through. That's original. So what was your introduction to actually going that way with filmmaking?
Well, I call these green movies. That's the
Yeah.
technique because they're made entirely out of recycled material. I don't have to do any shooting. I don't need a crew. I don't even need a camera. I have a fascination with this old footage. I love the way it looks. The fact that it is in the public domain makes it very affordable, and it inspires me to make these stories.
What introduced you to the idea of doing that? Was it a natural, because outside of it, you are a stock footage research for other films and other filmmakers as well. So has it always been something that you've, a bit like when I was younger and I used to go and look in libraries and you'd look at old microfiche or microfilm.
Yes.
And I used to love finding out things from those.
Yeah.
Is it the same sort of thing where you're just intrigued by old film and every time you come across an old film, you just have to know what it is?
It is. I mean, I've always, like I said, had a fascination with the look of it.
Yeah.
I find, there's obviously an element of nostalgia, but there's also just some kind of emotion that is conveyed, I think, with these grainy old films from that era that can really be molded, I think, into a multitude of things that aren't necessarily what they were meant for. So again, with the recycling, repurposing motif, that's sort of artistically where it came from. I would not say that I created this technique. As you mentioned, there are certainly plenty of other examples of people doing stuff like this. There's the Woody Allen movie, What's Up, Tiger Lily?
Yeah.
From the 60s, where he took a Japanese gangster movie or spy movie and he erased all the dialogue and redubbed it with funny lines to comedic effect. There's also things like Mystery Science Theater, who take public domain movies and just kind of heckle them, kind of comment on them. And then, as you said, a lot of different TV shows and filmmakers who have used this kind of footage for all kinds of purposes. But I do hope that what I bring, the new thing that I brought to the table, was to take just use clips from, in the example of Dead, White, and Blue, 300 different source films and cobble together like a Frankenstein monster, an entirely new storyline, also with completely new dialogue and music and sound effects that has nothing to do with whatever the film was originally meant to convey, and just really create something new out of that. There's a movie called Ed Wood by Tim Burton. I don't know if this happened in real life, but there's a scene where Ed Wood, who, for anyone who doesn't know, is known as like the worst film director in history. He made Plan 9 from Outer Space. He's a big inspiration on me. And he was working at one of the movie studios in Hollywood and passed by the stock footage room where the guy there had a film reel of some octopus or something. And he looked at it and said, "Oh, I wonder if you could just make a whole feature out of just this stuff." Because stock footage, which is my other kind of fascination along with the actual public domain films, is really used for filmmakers who, let's say, can't afford to shoot something. And so they need a piece of stock footage to throw in there. And it usually doesn't match. It doesn't look great. Filmmakers hate using it. They consider it a cheap compromise to something that they would much rather shoot themselves. But I love it. I love the way it looks. I appreciate it. I want to think that I've made an art out of taking this kind of unwanted stepchild of the film industry and giving it a life of its own, using it to make new stories.
We are going to come to the stock footage part of the chat later on because I love that side of it. So just as an introduction to that, I will say to people that one of my favourite uses of stock footage in recent years is the excellent work that was done for American Made, which I think was an incredible film anyway and underrated in Tom Cruise's career, in my opinion. But that stock footage that's in there is amazing, and it really adds authenticity, I think, to that film.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you saw that film. It's a really fun movie, and which I had the privilege to work on. That was one of my first really big kind of studio film gigs, working as an archival researcher. And yeah, I mean, probably that's where I really learned that the value that this stuff adds. And fortunately, the director of that film understood that too and appreciated it and was really open to using a lot, both editorial or historical kind of documentary footage
Yeah.
to put the movie in a certain place and time, but also stuff used creatively in an artistic way to just create a vibe, create a feeling, and also place us in that time and in the context of the story. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great.
Well, not to spend too long on this because I want to get onto your own filmmaking individually in a way, but the thing that I thought about that film as well was the fact that it's almost as though the filmmaker was inspired by the stock that you were finding, because the actual film quality that they used for the filmmaking in the modern age, so to speak, with Tom and with everybody else that was in the film, had a certain almost grain feel to it that lent itself to that era as well, which I thought was, I'm just guessing, was probably inspired by that footage that you found for them to include in the film.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for Doug Liman, the director. He definitely had a vision for that movie. And honestly, there's probably less stock in there than you think, because he did an amazing job of just recreating the look from that time. So it's possible that some of the things that people think is stock footage really isn't, and that's a credit to him. But yeah, I hope that I was able to help accentuate and help him to realize what he was trying to do.
Absolutely. So let's go back to your own filmmaking. When you're making a film yourself that is a green film, do you go sourcing the material, the footage, with a story in mind? Or from all these hours of searching through footage, have you already got in your head sort of things that you know, and that will bring a story to mind, and you know that you can find the footage for it?
It always starts with the footage. The footage dictates the story, because I can't include any plot point or storyline if I don't have the footage for it. Yeah. So I need to know that I have the footage first. So for Dead, White, and Blue, for example, I found this government-produced film from the 70s of an actual autopsy. And it's a really graphic, disgusting film, quite informative. But I just felt like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to use this for, but I have to use it for something because it's just too crazy. And the body in this film, and I think this was maybe an FBI film, so it was about crime. The body in this film had a bullet in the body where the medical examiner extracted it. And that kind of got my creative wheels turning. And I thought, okay, what if that bullet is sort of the centerpiece of the story? How did that bullet get there? Why was it important to get it out? Is there somebody else who maybe wants to get that bullet out before the medical examiner does? Maybe the bullet is a key piece of evidence. So that's really how the story starts. With my previous films, which include Sex Galaxy, President Wolfman, I started with a full public domain feature film, which, for anyone who doesn't know, public domain basically means that the film was not copyrighted, or it wasn't properly copyrighted. So some films are automatically in the public domain depending how old they are. I'm sure it's different in different countries, but in the US, it's anything before 1931, I think, at this point, and then it goes up a year every year. That's why, like, Mickey Mouse is in the public domain now, or at least the early version of him, because the first film featuring him came out in that year. So that's very exciting because any of these old films are available to use for any reason. They're in the public. I can use them, you can use them, and for any purpose. So, but those old films are, they're black and white. They're sometimes hard to work with. Quality's not great. So I love to work with footage from the 60s, 70s, 80s. that limits the footage that I'm able to use because most films from that time have been properly copyrighted. The
Yeah.
most famous example of one that wasn't is Night of the Living Dead, which is the 1968 George Romero zombie film, which essentially created the zombie genre. Great movie. I'm not exactly sure what the backstory is with that, but he just didn't copyright it correctly. So it is in the public domain and people use it for all kinds of stuff. They colorize it. Any company can release it and try to make money from it. That's how it works.
Yeah.
The other thing that makes a film public domain in the US is anything produced by the United States government, by the federal government, is automatically public domain.
Okay.
So you might think like, okay, well, that's, not going to be that exciting. It's maybe like army training. But the United States government has produced a lot of weird and wonderful films over the years for different reasons. A lot of them, there's a lot of stuff in the 60s, training films, warning soldiers not to take drugs like LSD because here's what could happen. There's a lot of stuff about weapons and just really, education and just everything. So for this film, I decided not to use an existing public domain feature as the base because in a way that was to me a little bit cheating. For President Wolfman, for example, I used a film called The Werewolf of Washington, which is another sort of public domain by accident film from the 70s. And that gave me the consistent look that I was able to kind of slice up, re-edit, and then add in a bunch of other clips from other films. For this film, I didn't want to do that. I just used these very short government films. Most of them are an average of about 5 to 10 minutes long. And anything I saw in them that caught my eye that I thought, okay, I want to throw that in the mix, I would. And then that dictated and became the storyline. Like, okay, I've got this weird footage of a cat flying in space. How can I fit that into the story? So that's a long answer to your question. But yeah, that's kind of how I work with that footage.
I noticed, is it the actor Robert Prosky you've got in there as well? Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, people have pointed that out to me. I'm familiar with that actor.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was him. I thought he looked familiar. I hope he doesn't mind. I don't think he's long with us.
No.
But yeah, he kind of became, I guess, known during the 80s. But
Yeah.
I guess earlier in his career, he would take jobs acting in these government produced films. A lot of the films that you find did use like soldiers and government personnel to be in the films, but a lot of them worked like any other industrial or educational short film where they had to go hire actors and hire a director and make this film. And a lot of them look pretty much like what you would see on TV during that time and similar qualities. So like I said before, I love the look of that. And it's great to be able to work with that kind of material.
But it worked for him being that specific character to get the story moving. It sort of needed that character that he was to be in there to push it and to basically get the medical examiner out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, he plays the KKK Grand Wizard, who you normally associate with some kind of Southern good old boy, as they say here. He definitely has more of a kind of New York, East Coast kind of feel, but that's the joke. In this movie, the KKK, who are the bad guys, are not really representative of anything like the real KKK. They're more like gangsters and like corporate executives. And so, yeah, I don't even really know exactly what he was doing in the original film. The first thing I do is I erase the soundtrack because I don't want to be influenced by what's actually happening in these films or what the actors are actually saying. I look at it as just sort of a clean slate visually that I have to put words into their mouths, which is how the process works. So yeah, he's great. He does a great job in this film, and I definitely appreciate that footage was available.
This is just me guessing. It must be easier now to do this sort of thing because I'm guessing that you would take the original stock or the original footage, and then would you transfer it to a digital format? Because I'm just saying that because when I was younger and I was trying to do film or to put film together for a project when I was at college, I would have to. We had tape machines where you would put the tape into the machines, and I think we had we had three machines, so we would have one in one machine, one in another, and then in the third machine was the actual tape that I was transferring the footage onto to build a film with. So I'm guessing it's a lot easier now than it was then.
Very much so. And most of the stuff that I work with has already been digitized. The government has, an AV department who over the years have done a pretty good job of digitizing most of their films. I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff that's been lost, unfortunately, but it's available. You can find it. It's through the Library of Congress, through NARA, which is the National Archives. Each government agency and branch of the military kind of produces their own stuff. So you can find it. And I don't think they probably thought anybody was going to be using it for this purpose, but it's great that it's legal. And honestly, I see it as sort of a patriotic duty. It's part of the First Amendment here. And if it's produced by the government, it's owned by the people, and the people could do with it whatever they want, even if it's used to criticize that very government that made it available. And so that's kind of what this film does.
So you're looking back at this footage and you're coming up with a story for the film. So this is almost a two-part question in a way. Are you purposely trying to match closely or be close to the movements of the mouths in scenes? I know you can't be perfect every time, but then that's the humour that you get from the old voiceover joke. When we all used to watch like Chinese films or something, we'd giggle or laugh because there's no way that it matched. So number one, are you looking at what the mouths are doing and thinking of dialogue that way? And then number two, on the back of that, have you got people who are voicing those characters already in mind when you're doing that?
The first part of the question, I try to match the dialogue. I have this footage, and then I'll have a clip of the dialogue, and I lay the dialogue on top of the footage, and I just see how it goes. And I'm a big fan of those kung fu movies also. And I don't mind if it doesn't match. It's a lot. It works better for me, actually. It's not perfect, because if I tried to make it perfect, then when it wasn't, people would notice. I have found with audiences, especially my audiences, they're very forgiving. And if you kind of set that tone at the beginning, like, hey, this isn't going to match, you're going to know that these aren't these actors saying this dialogue. People, as long as it's funny and entertaining, people are very willing to go along with the ride and just accept it. Like, in my films, the characters don't always match either. I'll use a lot of doubles because if I only have 30 seconds of one character and I need him to do certain things, I might have to use an actor from a different movie who looks a little bit like that guy. And I'm sure people notice that. And I think, again, it's part of the fun of the kind of films that I make. And ideally people are just willing to go along with it. And then part two, not really. I work with voice actors who are very talented and can do like 20 voices. Yeah. And so when I first started doing this, I thought it was important for the voice actor to see the character they were playing or even see the scene and maybe try to mimic. And then I realized that's really not important. These voiceover actors are pros. They know what they're doing. Just from the line of dialogue, they know how to read it right. And I just found that it was better to give them free rein to be creative. And then I would make that work with the footage rather than the other way around. And it's funny because I used to work at DreamWorks Animation, which is a big animation studio here in Los Angeles. And it's the same way they make movies. They bring in the actors, they have them just record the script, and then they animate to the voice recording.
Yeah.
And so I try to do the same thing. It's almost like making a cartoon.
Do you just get that one bit, or I know some people who do, say, audio dramas, for instance, for the BBC and things like that, they sometimes get like three passes or something, where they will give a slightly different feel for each of those three, and then the director or the person behind it picks which one of those they think work for that sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's generally how it works. I used to feel like you have to get a lot of takes and have a lot of options. And I think it's because I'm naturally not a director. I
Right.
never really aspired to be a director. I kind of fell into it because this is how I was able to get films made and get my writing produced, was to just do it myself. And I found over time that really just trusting the actors, not making them do it a million times, having less choices really makes the job easier. And yeah, so it's the same with the footage. I don't have 20 takes of each shot. I don't have three different angles to
No.
choose from how to edit it together. I have one because it's all pre-existing. It's already been produced. So the editing process is actually probably easier than people would imagine because the choices are limited. You have one shot and you have to just use it to the fullest.
Because I know when I've done voices for people for audio drama, I normally do three takes and then I'll send them those three different files for them to use. So editing it all together then, I think you've sort of explained this in a way, in a sense already, maybe.
Well, I think the easiest way to describe it is that it's the filmmaking process backwards.
Yeah.
Most people start with the script and then they cast actors and they go on set and they shoot it and then they edit it all together and do all the post-production, the sound. I start out with the finished product,
Yeah.
which is the produced film. And so the first thing I do is I assemble a rough cut, which is basically a silent version with no dialogue, no script, no nothing, into a general story. You know, I kind of know how the story's going to work. And so I just cut that together and have this kind of big rough cut. And then I start writing the script to that. And inevitably things change and I'll have other ideas and the footage will get shifted around a little bit. But generally, I'll then write the script, record the actors, and then I'll make just sort of a sound version of the movie, like almost like an old radio play, just the dialogue.
Yeah.
And then I'll take the dialogue and kind of lay it under the footage and start squeezing it together and making it work. And hopefully by the end of that process, I have something that resembles a coherent storyline, which you could argue I may or may not have. But that's the process.
I like the different way of doing that. It's not quite the same, but similar to Alfred Hitchcock used to say that he basically made the film before he'd even gone to set, because he had this thing of he would always storyboard the film out all the way through. So he knew what was going to happen from one bit to the end to the end. And I like these different ways of doing film, that I just find it interesting to go away from the norm and look at things that way. There's other bits as well where you've edited bits together and I don't know whether you've actually done it on purpose, but it's almost like there's certain bits where when they're mentioning things and they're talking about things, there'll suddenly be something there and it's like, and there's this, and then there's this. And it's almost as though you've added a bit of a joke in there because there's this little bit of footage that you've thrown in there almost as a gag in a way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, above anything else, these are comedies.
Yeah.
I want them to be funny. I want people to laugh. These are not meant to be taken seriously. This film especially is like highly satirical.
Yeah.
So getting a laugh is important. And I've found that because it's so subjective and one person could find something hilarious and the other person could find the same thing completely unfunny, that it's just best to pack as many jokes as you can. Some people like to say that this movie reminds them of Airplane. It's just gag, 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 gag. And they just throw anything against the wall. And if maybe 1 out of 5 makes you laugh, that's not bad. If it's just, doesn't stop coming at you. So yeah, I use visual gags. I try to use funny lines of dialogue, but the specific thing that you're talking about, which is, I guess you would just call it like a cutaway,
Yes. Yeah.
visual gag. Again, it's just a way to use the maximum amount of footage. If I see just some little visual thing that catches my eye that has nothing to do with the movie or the story, I'll just find a way to reference it, to show it. And then conversely, if the actor is giving a long speech and I don't have enough footage of that actor to just see him talking, and also that gets kind of boring.
Yeah.
My mind just goes, and anything that he's saying in his dialogue, I'll just cut to it. And one of my big inspirations in terms of filmmaking and editing specifically is Russ Meyer, who's a 60s kind of sexploitation filmmaker known for well-endowed women. But my favorite thing about him is his editing style, which he does that too. It's just, he, cut. And anything that the people are talking about, you see it. And it's just a great use of this footage, and it's a good way to have stuff to cut to when you need it.
Yeah. It's almost like very early Gilliam-esque sort of approach, how he used to do edits for the Pythons, for their little in-between bits, and just throwing bits in there just as a, like you said, like a cutaway. Instead of having like black, they used to throw in like a really quick couple of second gag that he's found footage for or created for that he will throw in there. And Terry, he's lost that over the years, but at the beginning, he had that sort of approach to it as well, and he used the same sort of thing back then.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just fun. It's a fun, and it, again, if you have somebody giving a funny speech, you have to hope that the audience thinks that speech is funny. If they don't, you have to give them something else to maybe think is funny. So just, you throw in as much as you can.
Like you said, it's got that bit there. That is like Aeroplane. It's like a Zucker Abrams type of, like, if that joke didn't work, you've got another one coming within seconds, and then you've got another one and another one. They're just wall to wall jokes. But I also thought then, going back to where I was going to go, the music sounds of the time as well. That fits with that sort of 70s blaxploitation sort of thing that this is similar to my mind.
Yeah, music is always challenging because unlike footage, there really isn't public domain music that's out there, and especially, from that time. So I kind of struck gold because I actually found a band who were all members of the United States Navy. And I guess just for fun, they had a soul band in the 70s that they would, perform at like Navy dances. And they put out a couple albums, and they kind of use the albums as a promotional tool for the Navy to say, like, hey, look, you can, we're hip too if you join, because those were recorded by employees of the federal government and produced. They are that music is in the public domain. So it is, in fact, of the time. And, I use other things too. I played in a band, I played drums, and we had kind of a instrumental, like, funky band. And so I used some of that stuff. But yeah, the music is great. And I have to thank those guys for putting their band together back then.
That's really brilliant, that is. Right, 2004 then, the forming of Stag Films. Was that relatively soon after leaving university, or was there a period leading up to it? What led up to starting Stag Films?
There was a long time in between. I was trying to do the film industry the right way, which was to come to Los Angeles, get an entry-level job, work my way up from the bottom, and with the ultimate goal of trying to get my own films made. I really, again, wasn't trying to be a director. I wanted to be a screenwriter. And I just found that whole process very frustrating. It's actually really unlikely that that's ever going to happen doing it that way. The way to make it happen is to make films and the people in the industry aren't really interested if if you're working on a set or answering somebody's phone, and you say, oh, by the way, I have a screenplay. I don't want to discourage anybody, but that doesn't really get you much reaction here, because pretty much that's everybody. So it really came out of frustration. I decided that I was tired of waiting around for somebody to say yes to me and give me permission to do what I came out here to do and what my passion was. I had never needed permission before as a kid. If you want to make art, you just do it. So really, that's what I did. I had an opportunity to, with a script that I wrote, which was actually a Russ Meyer homage called Pervert, to get that script got produced. And that just, that inspired me to essentially leave my job and just try to do this full time. But even in the independent world, films are expensive. They cost a lot of money to make.
Yeah.
And even low budget films are still more money than most people have just laying around. So that's really where the footage thing crept in. I was just racking my brain. How can I make a film for very little money without having to deal with all this stuff? I'd been collecting this footage for a long time because I just had a fascination with it. And I just started experimenting with it. So I created my own company, Stag Films, which is an homage to sort of the old 8mm, 16mm film reels that guys would gather in basements and watch at a bachelor party or something. But it's kind of that look and that aesthetic of the films that I really love, the old grindhouse movies, the old exploitation movies. That for me is really like my bread and butter. And Stag Films was born. So I ended up doing the footage on Hollywood productions and commercials and music videos, but also as sort of a parallel track to use it to make my own films.
So you've started Stag Films. Was the work that you were doing as an archive researcher and a stock footage researcher, was that still running in tandem, or is that something that came off the back of Stag Films?
It did come off the back of Stag Films because after doing my first film, people kind of knew, oh, this guy knows about archival footage. So I kind of was able to get my name out there. But generally speaking, I would say that they work in tandem. I don't really see a lot of differentiation between what I do with my own films and what I'm able to do with Hollywood films. It's the same skill. Is how do you take this unrelated, unconnected piece of footage and use it in a creative way to help realize a bigger vision? So that's what I do in my films, and that's what I do, for other people too. And I enjoy it.
Well, it seems to be a bigger thing, probably because I've been researching yourself and your own career. It seems to have been a bigger thing over the last, say, 20 or so years for them to do that, as opposed to using other techniques, which I find interesting, especially when I was saying about, American made, and then you've got footage from, here we go, ready for this, guys? Okay, so you've got American made that you've done research for, The Lighthouse, amazing film. I mean, all these are great films. Midsommar, Jungle Land, Marvel's Eternals, this really good footage in there. Armageddon Time, Now You See Me, Now You Don't, War Machine. I actually like the stock footage that you've got in 80 for Brady as well, for instance, which I actually quite like that film. But it just seems to be something that I like, that they're doing that and looking back to the time that they're in these films trying to bring into them, rather than trying other, maybe more expensive or other ways that they don't necessarily need to do because the footage is there.
Yeah, I mean, each one of those films you mentioned really used footage for different reasons. But I guess what it really all comes down to is budget. Most directors would rather shoot stuff themselves, but if it's beyond the budget they have to work with, they have to come up with a creative alternative. And that's really the reason for stock footage.
In my opinion, I think it works better.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you use it to show historical moments, that's when it's really effective. But I love the directors who can use it artistically as well.
What you were saying about using it artistically, is there a moment there where you were particularly thought to yourself, wow, that is a really good inventive use and artistic use of that?
Well, I worked on this movie Greenland, and it was similar to another movie I worked on, War Machine, which was more recent, where there was the storyline dealt with essentially like an Armageddon kind of situation where a lot of stuff was getting destroyed. And when it comes to cities being burned and blown up, that's obviously very expensive. Of course, nowadays with CGI and AI, maybe it's not, but if you're avoiding using that, you can take things that really happened and change the context and make it look like something else. So, you could take just a fire, even a war zone, and you can transform it into something that fits in with the story that you're trying to tell. You have to be careful because you don't want to exploit anybody. You don't want to profit off of somebody else's misery. But, again, that's what stock footage is for. People understand that these are things that happen in the world and artists are going to reflect on that. And so if you want authenticity, this is a really creative way to use that kind of material.
Cool. So Dead, White and Blue is out next month.
Oh, well, we are doing a big screening here in the Los Angeles area at the Shakagogo Film Festival, which is a great festival. I think it's in its 10th year or maybe even longer. But they are screening some great movies, some classic 80s horror films, and also a bunch of new stuff. And so Dead, White, and Blue is going to be screening there on June the 7th. The film is also available to watch free on Tubi if anybody gets that streaming station, as well as Fossum, and hopefully more to come in the coming months. But right now, the June 7th screening, for anyone in the LA area, please come by. I would love to see you there.
Cool. And I think if you go there with the right mind, I think you're going to have a good time and a good laugh. Well, your laughs will just keep coming and coming through the film. It's got some really hilarious moments in there. So are you busy at the moment just doing the promo for this, or have you got something else coming up in the works that you're looking at?
I do have a new project that I'm working on. It's very different. It is a fun action adventure surfing Hawaii drug smuggling romp called Hot Heat Hawaii. Yeah. And where Dead, White, and Blue is decidedly more blaxploitation 70s, this one is very 90s, a lot of bright colored neon, cheesy acting, and fun visuals, and it should be a good time. So watch out for that. Hopefully I'll be finished in the next couple of months.
I think that sounds great. Can't wait to see that. Where can people get hold of you and find out about you?
Well, stag-films.com. You can reach us there. And also on Instagram right now, because we are promoting Dead, White, and Blue. Dead, White, Blue movie on Instagram is where we're probably most active right now. And that's where we found each other, which is great. It was great to meet you and connect. So find us there, reach out, say hello, and we'd love to make new friends.
Thank you very much for speaking with me today, Mike.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find Pods Like Us on any streaming platform. And if you just go to themarvzone.org, you will find all of the links to everywhere, including the Patreon and the Instagram and all the socials. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.